What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are diving into an interview with the Jason Goes to Hell director, Adam Marcus. And one of the main reasons we wanted to talk to him was because of some claims that Sean Cunningham made recently at SteelCon that just didn't feel quite right. So we directly reached out to Adam Marcus to get his side of that story, and we got to ask some pretty cool questions along the way as well. Adam is an amazing dude. It's one of the best interviews I've ever had to be a part of, and I'm really excited for you guys to check it out. At the beginning, there's a little bit of lag issues, but it does fade away pretty quickly, and it's a fun interview. We did cut some out, but we are hoping to make a podcast version of this as well for Make Every Death Count, our podcast, which there is a link in the description below. Now we're going to dive right into him answering the first question. So like I said, a little laggy at first, but it will fade away pretty quickly. Now with that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching, and enjoy the video. So I actually wanted to start by asking you about a Facebook post that you recently made that mentions that Jason Goes to Hell actually started off with pretty great reviews until one person went and just kind of really dug into the movie.
The reviews were split, which, again, when we talk about split at this time period, the Friday the 13th movies were notorious for getting horrible reviews. I mean, horrible, trashed by everybody. If you remember, Tim Lucas in Cinefantastique on the first Friday the 13th ended his entire review, okay, saying that Harry Manfredini's score was just a and that Sean Cunningham had once again stolen from Bernard. This was just one more example of his cinematic larceny. And the last line of the review was, "There's way more ham here than cunning." Okay, so that's one of the first reviews of the original Friday the 13th. Siskel and Ebert hated the movie so much that on television, on national television and in print, they gave the home addresses of Paramount, Betsy Palmer, and Sean Cunningham so you could write hate mail to them. Not kidding. Like, there was such vitriol about these movies. And by the way, it never got better. Like, through part 8, the critics just tore these movies to pieces. There were a few good reviews for part 6. There were a few good reviews for part 4. But for the most part, the reviews were just slaughterhouses. Jason Goes to Hell, when it came out, actually got a bunch of good reviews, like really good reviews. We got a ton of terrible reviews. I'm not saying we didn't. But it was split. Even the New York Times gave us a good review. The Wall Street Journal gave us a good review. I mean, we had some really kind of cool places say, this is kind of a new direction for these movies. And it's kind of refreshing. And this is really cool. So when I came out of the making of that film, when the film came out, all of my first interview, my first meeting after the movie was at Zoetrope for Francis Ford Coppola. So I had filmmakers who were like really excited by the tone of the movie and the direction and all that. And I remember, I went to a dozen screenings of the movie when it first opened, and there was nothing but people cheering in the audiences. It was kind of incredible. So the initial reaction to the movie, and this is prior to the big explosion of the internet, was really kind of positive. Then there was this turn, and forgive me, I actually have researchers right now working on sort of this patient zero of the hatred over the movie. So I don't have that critic's name. It's been told to me over the years, and I kind of just put it out of my head. And now that there's archival stuff happening because of the documentary being made, we're all going kind of deep diving and dealing with where this all germinated from. But there was an epicenter of hatred for the movie. And look, all you have to do is follow national politics right now and realize, like, hate works. Like, people hating something works really well to get a mob together. And suddenly there was this kind of mob mentality. Well, the other problem was that suddenly Sean Cunningham didn't want to be the father of the movie and threw his hands up. And this is a very kind of, an old expression about, success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. And Sean saw the movie suddenly as a failure. The truth is, Sean made a ton of money on this movie. I mean, a ton of money. And by the way, I mean, back in that time when the movie came out on DVD, not on VHS, it was one of the biggest VHS releases that New Line had ever had, because it's the first movie they had ever put out in a rated and unrated edition at the same time. Jason Goes to Hell was the first one. So every mom and pop shop, instead of ordering one copy, they had to order two. So it was the way that they doubled sales on that movie. It was incredible. I mean, I remember when they would call me from New Line talking about the video, and like, we are so thrilled with the way this thing is selling. So it was a huge success. The movie was only made for $2.5 million. So the fact that it made, that it made eight in the opening weekend, which back then $8 million was a huge opening weekend. In fact, when the movie came out, it was the second week The Fugitive had been out, right? The Harrison Ford movie. So we knew we're never going to beat The Fugitive. Like, it's never going to happen. So Fugitive got the number one, but the headline of Variety that Monday was number one goes to Fugitive, rest of box office goes to hell. So, which is kind of awesome. So I have that in my office, actually. So we had this huge opening. The movie made ultimately about $18 million at the box office on a $2.5 million budget. That's a giant success. And again, we're talking 1993, when movies didn't normally take in $50 million on an opening weekend. It just didn't happen. So, the thing about this movie is that it was incredibly successful. And then Sean didn't like the fact that, look, let's be honest, between this, then Jason X, then Freddy versus Jason, which, by the way, Sean is responsible for those movies and the first one. That's it. He was not around for the birth of the hockey mask. He thought Jason Voorhees in the second movie was a dumb idea. He thought Jason being the killers in these movies was a dumb idea. He thought the hockey mask was dumb. He thought the whole thing was dumb. And so when he came on to take over the franchise back with Part 9, when he brought me in, he had a certain disdain for the franchise. It was, I'd like the money. So great. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. That's fine. He's a producer. It's a business. I totally get it. As a fan of these movies, as a rabid fan of these movies, the opportunity to make one of them was so extraordinary that when he said to me, look, get the damn hockey mask out of the movie and I'll let you write and direct this thing, I was like, okay, great. And I went off to write for 3 days. I brought him back a treatment, and that's where it was born. So, Sean kind of threw his hands up. He jumped on the bandwagon of haters. And the next thing you know, I've got this guy who was like a father to me when I was a kid, who is now bashing the work that we did together. So I'm like, wow, you enjoyed the money from it. You enjoyed all the financial success you got from it, but you're not going to stand by a movie that, by the way, you have to remember, I was 22 when I got the job. I was 23 when I shot the film. Okay. Sean loves to say that I'm lying, that I got rid of the mask and that he had nothing to do with getting rid of the mask. Okay, here's the thing. And I say this to everybody who will listen. Whenever I'm at a convention, I tell people, take out your phones, photograph this. I have no problem with you putting this on the internet. So one of two things is true. Either A, I am the single most extraordinary 22-year-old in the history of the world, because a 22-year-old film school graduate overpowered the 50-something Sean S. Cunningham, the creator of the world's largest, most important horror franchise. I overpowered him with my savvy and my strength of character, and said, you're going to take the hockey mask out of the movie, Sean. Deal with it. It's the way it needs to go. Kids don't want to see a hockey mask anymore. By the way, kids, I was a kid. So this is what he says happened, right? So either I am this titan of 22-year-olds, or Sean said, get the fucking hockey mask out of the movie. And I said, yes, sir. So either I am a incredibly powerful being, or I was a 22-year-old kid who was so thrilled to get this job that I was willing to do what it took to make it work, and I was following the orders of my producer. Now, that's my side of it. From Sean's side of it, either he is a eunuch who a 22-year-old could just beat the crap out of and leave him in the wake and just go, I'm going to do what I want with your franchise, or he's a fucking liar. He can have either one. I will take either scenario. I'll take it from him. If he can say, I was a complete eunuch and Adam was the most powerful filmmaker I've ever met with, I'll take it. Awesome. I will totally take that. I will take that mantle. Because the other side of it means I was a good guy and a responsible filmmaker doing what my producer wanted. And that makes him a liar for all of these years. So it's his choice. He can have whichever scenario he wants. I'll go with it.
You know, I've always found it interesting that Jason Goes to Hell tends to get bad reviews, and people kind of put that as your one big movie, and that's your reputation. But you've actually had some incredible films in the past, specifically like Let It Snow and the run it had at Sundance and films like that.
Yeah. Here's the thing, and look, and I can't be upset about it because I'm a lucky artist to have a between this and Texas Chainsaw, I've got these franchises that are bigger than myself, that are huge franchises, that are more important than any of the people who made them. Like, Sean absolutely is the father of the franchise without doubt because he produced and directed the first film. By the way, Victor Miller wrote the script. So anybody who loves to jump on that horse, like, you're missing the boat. Victor Miller created that movie just as much as Sean did. He should have just as much credit and just as much money. And of course, that's why Sean's upset. But here's the thing. To this day, I am still known as Adam Jason Goes to Hell Marcus. So that's my middle name. It will probably be written on my tombstone. No matter what I do in my life, but you know what? Okay. I mean, I was just talking to the team that's working on the Dark Heart documentary that we're working on, and I was just talking to them, and I said, and one of the people that was there, who I can't mention yet because his involvement is going to be kind of a big surprise for everybody, but he said to me, he said, I'm amazed the number of giant movies, huge hit movies, let's even say The Fugitive, that nobody talks about anymore. Just nobody discusses it. Yet people will have knockdown, drag-out fights with each other over Jason Goes to Hell. So a movie that made hundreds of millions of dollars, and the same weekend that we were there, no one even knows. Like, they're like, yeah, I know that movie happened, but I don't care. I'll give you a better one. On the night that Jason Goes to Hell came out, because I had already seen the movie, 4,000 times, I paid for a ticket for Jason Goes to Hell. This was in Los Angeles. Paid for a ticket in LA because I wanted my movie to make the money. And then I snuck across the room to the theater playing a movie called Searching for Bobby Fischer. Okay. Have you ever heard of it? Right. But you've never heard of it and you never seen it. Okay. Here's the thing. That movie was written and directed by the guy who wrote Schindler's List. Okay. He's a remarkable filmmaker. It stars Ben Kingsley, Joe Mantegna, Joan Allen. It's an incredible film. It's one of my favorite movies. It's an amazing film, right? Nobody knows it existed. It opened the same night as Jason Goes to Hell. And we're talking Academy Award-winning cast, and nobody knows it happened. What I'm saying is, look, the reason I love genre, and the reason I've loved it since I was truly old enough to watch a movie, I love genre because of the way it makes people feel. You can't get around the fact these movies find their way into our psyche and they stay there. I mean, think about it this way. Look at, I just think Fright in general. I think there's something about that dark side of humanity. If you look at our film right now, what's going on in our industry, I mean, you got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right? Which centers around Charles Manson. You've got the second season of Mindhunter, which just dropped, which centers around Charles Manson. I mean, there is something about this darkness that people are attracted to, not because they want to do bad things. There's something about watching this stuff that keeps it in an arm's length from us, where we can actually enjoy kind of the dark side of this, and I think actually exorcise those demons. If you ever meet Stephen King or Wes Craven, God rest his soul, who was such an amazing man, or George Romero, God rest his soul, or Tobe Hooper. God, man, we've lost too many of these guys, like way too many of these too quickly. They were kind, good, lovely men. And they were the darkest guys as far as their art that you'd ever imagine. But I think it's because we excise that stuff through ourselves. I think we get rid of it by putting it on screen. So look, here's the thing. I was very lucky to grow up in the situation I grew up in. I had amazing mentors. And by the way, I hold Sean in esteem for the way he treated me before he had to pay me. The moment money got involved is when our relationship went horribly south. Prior to that, he really was like a father to me. I mean, that's why this whole thing has been so heartbreaking on my side of it. I tried not to say anything negative about Sean for decades, and he just persisted, and for no other reason for my money than greed. And that's horribly painful. But I had incredible mentors growing up in the theater and on film. Look, I got to go to NYU for my film school education, which was incredible. I paid a lot of my way through school by my theater that I ran. Look, I recognize how lucky I was. I also never stopped working. Everybody's got this story, especially my generation. We've all got the story of, the Saturday morning first weekend screening of Star Wars. And the minute I saw, the Imperial destroyer go over my head, the second I saw that happen in that movie, I turned to my dad and I went, I want to do that. And the incredible thing is, that was when I was 9 years old. Dude, I have not spent one day of my life not doing that. That's what I've done every single day since then. When I was 11 years old, I started working in the theater. When I was 15, I created my own company. And by the way, Sean helped in the creation of that company. He was really supportive. His son Noel and I created our first film production company when we were 13. And I went out and shot movies on a video camera that I got for my 13th birthday. And dude, it was one of those cameras that was attached to the VCR. You had to carry the VCR with the video. I mean, you talk about dedication of a filmmaker. But man, listen, first off, good for you for going to film school. Well done. There's too many people who try to poo-poo that. I think it's incredibly important for you to understand film theory and to understand how a movie gets made, not just in front of the camera, but the ideas behind it, how that builds and germinates. But here's the other thing, man. You know how awesome it is that you are living in a time now where you have a movie studio on your freaking telephone? Like, you can shoot, cut, work the sound, all from this. I mean, that's incredible. And listen, I also know it's a little daunting because now everybody's got a movie studio in their pocket. So it really does come down to who has talent and who doesn't. But here's the thing. If you have a modicum of talent and a ton of tenacity, I think a dream of being a filmmaker is attainable to anyone who has that need. And dude, I've had that need when we didn't have any of these tools. When making, Let It Snow was a tiny independent film. I mean, really tiny. It was financed through private equity in New York City. My brother and I put the whole movie together. And dude, I got the movie in the can for $200,000. And that's shot on 35 millimeter, 50 locations, 52 speaking roles, 4 states in 21 days. And, that's when you had to look, dude, most of our budget was film, was just the actual footage we put through a camera, And by the way, that was a union movie. That was a SAG movie. Every crew member got paid. Everybody got paid. So $200,000 was peanuts back then. Now, man, I just made my latest film for a fraction of that cost. And that's what we're capable of now because of the tools that are available to us. And that's an extraordinary thing, man.
Yeah, we actually just recently raised money for a Friday the 13th fan film, of all things. And yeah, it's crazy how much you can accomplish with such little money for a film now. The one thing that does stand out, especially for things like Jason Goes to Hell, is effects. The practical effects can be really tricky in that situation. And yeah, I would say that's where people overlook Jason Goes to Hell all the time, is the fact that it has some of the best effects of the entire franchise.
I mean, look, let's be honest. We're talking about KNB at the height of their powers. When Bob Kurtzman, who is one of my best friends of the last 25 years, or sorry, 27 years now, Bob was with the company still. So it's Bob Kurtzman, Howard Berger, and Greg Nicotero. And dude, their crew, guys like Bill Hunt, who now lives in New Zealand and did Lord of the Rings. We're talking about like a crew of the most amazing artists who I don't know if we'll ever see that period of time again, because it was at a period when things weren't done with CGI. You had to have practical. And so you would get these teams of incredible guys and girls together. And again, K&B was actually amazing because they actually had female effects artists back in a time when nobody had that. So they were ahead of the curve in every way possible. And Bob and I were like, we were brothers instantly. Like, I've never had a connection with another filmmaker like this. So much so, Bob just did all the effects in my latest movie, Secret Santa. He did everything. And he was like, and we had no money, literally no money. And in fact, I have, this is great because when he came on board to do Secret Santa, he said to me, he said, there's a decapitation in the movie, and it's a pretty outrageous decapitation. And he said, Adam, how the hell are we doing this? We don't have the money to do a decap. And I'm like, I got that one. Trust me, I got it. So he's like, oh, okay, I don't know how you're going to pull it off, but all right, we get to set, and I literally hand him a box. And he's like, what's this? I said, it's a present for production. He opens it up. It's my brother Kip's head from Jason Goes to Hell in perfect shape. I've kept it all these years. And there's a guy in the movie who looks a lot like my brother Kip did back then. And I was like, there you go. Decapitation. Done. And I'm telling you, Bob laughed for about 20 minutes. And Bob's not a big laugher. And he lost it. And all he had to do was redress the head, make it look a little more like my actor Michael. And next thing you know, we have a $20,000 effect in our movie. So, but again, look, here's the thing. Where I would tell you as a filmmaker, where I would tell you to look for practical, because I think everybody should be going back to practical as much as you possibly can. Look, digital's great to enhance things, to add stuff when you need to. I get it. But for my money, there are so many young, hungry makeup effects artists out there that I think if you just put it out in the ether, we're looking for somebody who wants to make their reel. We don't have a lot of money. That's not what this movie's about. But you will get a great reel of your work if you come on board and help us out. And then, look, you pay for you pay for materials, but a true artist and a young artist should want to be making stuff. Look, I'd say to them the exact same thing I'd say to any filmmaker. It's like, you know what? You can sit at home and Netflix and chill all weekend, or you can go out this weekend and make a movie. So why don't you go make a movie? Like, why not have something at the end of that weekend that you can actually show to people and go, no, this is my calling card. This is what I'm able to do. So I get everybody has to have a day job. I get it. But when you're a young filmmaker, man, it's just about getting film through a camera. It's just about shooting images and telling stories. And so I hear you. By the way, what's your fan film? What is a fan film of?
Our fan film actually takes place back in the 80s, 1 year after Part 4. So we're kind of running through with that timeline, breaking things up a little bit. It's just a way for people to keep the franchise alive as this lawsuit continues on, which I really don't think it should be. I think most people are in the place where we think that Victor Miller kind of wrapped things up already, and now we're just kind of dragging it on. It's a shame, really.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Look, the shame, I remember I said this about Sean a long time ago, because, I own producer points on Jason Goes to Hell. And I saw what Sean bought with the profits from Jason Goes to Hell. He made an unbelievable amount of money, and I never got a dollar, not a dime. And I remember I was in his new house at one point, and I said, "So, is this my bedroom? Is that my percentage? Like, do I get to live here in this room? Because that should be mine, right?" And he was like, his penguin-esque laugh. What I've always said about Sean, and honestly, people like Sean Cunningham, and this goes for a lot of people in our industry, it would cost them pennies to be generous, to just every once in a while throw someone a check and say, "Great work, good job." Instead, they do this thing that, again, is so freaking American in its culture, and I love my country, but I hate the way the rich are just pillaging our country. Man, like, treat people with respect, treat people with kindness. You don't have to go overboard. You don't have to go crazy. But you know what? When you hear people like Keanu Reeves breaking up a few $1 million and handing it to people who worked on The Matrix and acknowledging the only reason this movie's making this much money, the only reason I look so cool in this movie is because of all of you. I'm sorry, Keanu Reeves is considered the best guy ever since Jesus. And what it cost him? A few dollars? Like, just be nice. Just be nice. That's all it is. And the problem is that I think Sean, I just think he's very angry, and I think that that his career is not what he wanted it to be. It's not. I know that, and he can deny that. I don't care. I don't care what he says at this point. I grew up with the guy. I know who he is. I know where the bodies are buried, and just be nice. And quite frankly, he could have been nice to Victor. He could have settled this so quickly. And instead, it's about winning. And it's about never saying you're wrong. And that is a really stupid way to live your life. Because you can't take the money with you. When you go, you're just gone. And all that matters is what you left behind. So Sean's going to leave behind that he made a knockoff of Halloween, which really, really, I don't know what he has to be proud of now. And quite frankly, he could have let this franchise be something that could have kept giving and kept creating. And I just think it's a shame that his greed seems to be more important to him than ending his life. Look, he's almost 80 years old. He's going to be 80 next year. It's like, what do you want your life to mean? Me personally, I want my life to be something that I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud of the movies I've made, even the ones that aren't great. And that happens. You're a filmmaker. You're going to sometimes make a crappy movie. It happens. I happen to make a freaking movie with Val Kilmer. Giant mistake. But I want to be proud of not just that, but of the relationships that I build and the people that I take care of and the people that take care of me. And that doesn't happen if just all you're concerned about is how many dollars you have. It's just a sad, sad way to live a life.
Yeah, I think that's just one of the reasons why all of us are so bummed about the lawsuit in the first place. Like, the amount of money that's being lost because of the lawsuit, it's just tremendous.
This is all ego. This is all about his ego. It's all about his ego. And Victor won the lawsuit. He won. So he's proven his case. He won the damn lawsuit, and now Sean is appealing, and that process is going to go on forever. And because Sean can't say he's wrong, just say you're wrong. Pay Victor and be done. And both of you join forces and go make a ton of money with a ton of stuff. But here's the good news. I will say this. The only good thing about the franchise being stalled this way is I actually think it's giving voice to a whole new generation of filmmakers that are now going out and making these great fan movies and doing their own thing with it, like yourself. I think that matters more. I actually think that if the Friday the 13th franchise ends up being in the hands of all of these young filmmakers, great. Cool. it would pass to you anyway. So great. So now it has passed to you. You can't make money off of it, but you can still tell the stories. And as long as you're not making money off of it, you can tell any story you want.
So I really wanted to make sure this question got in here. Sean Cunningham recently spoke on a panel at SteelCon and talked about reshoots for Jason Goes to Hell, and the movie came in at 2.5 hours, and they pretty much had to cut half of that down, and there was a bunch of reshoots, and they reshot basically the entire film except for like 40 minutes. Now, I heard you say that it was only 3 days, so I'm just kind of curious where all that
3 days,
happened.
that's it. 3 days. 3 days of additional shooting, that's it. Okay, here's what happened. First off, Sean is lying about every single word that came out of his mouth at SteelCon was a lie. Every single word. And we're going to address all of it in the documentary. Like, all of it. That being said, look, Sean likes to say, I delivered a movie that was 2.5 hours long. He's nuts. I mean, he's just nuts. We delivered a movie that was a little over 2 hours long, by the way, which I was allowed so little input into the cut. That's Sean's cut, okay, the 2-hour one. We then reduced that down to a cut that was somewhere in the mid-80s, okay, which is, by the way, incredibly normal for any studio movie. Incredibly normal, right? So we cut it down to the mid-80s. We then showed the film. By the way, I am close friends now with several people who were in that audience as people participating in the panel for the movie. So these are people that I met years later who had been sitting in that theater for that panel, okay? We got great test scores, especially for a horror film. Horror films don't do well at screenings because no one wants to write that they love a horror movie. It's just the way it works. So we got really good scores, but people wanted more camper kills. They wanted campers by the lake getting slaughtered. Great. There were a couple of areas they were just simply confused about the rules. So we needed to go and shoot, put in a couple of shots that are in the, that are in the jail scene, in the finger breaking scene, just to clean up a couple of rules. We cleaned up a couple of those with Stephen Williams. And if you watch the film really closely, you'll see he loses about 5 pounds in one shot. He suddenly gets a little thinner and his eyes are a little wilder, and it's simply 6 months had passed. That's it. The next thing that was shot was Carrie Keegan in the television studio with Stephen Culp. Okay. That one shot was shot. It's one shot, one angle, because that's all Sean knows how to do. He set up one camera, shot that shot because Carrie Keegan would not shoot with me anymore because she and I had a falling out in the last few days of the initial shoot. Okay. Sean also shot two shots of Carrie in the initial photography. That's all Sean directed. That's it. 3 shots with Carrie Keegan. Got it. And I give him full credit over those 3 glorious shots. And then we shot the camper footage, which included not just the campground, but also Steven picking them up on the side of the road. So we shot all that stuff. Okay. That's it. That's all we shot. And by the way, if you look at that page where that thing was put up, where the video was put up on the Jason Goes to Hell page, Bob Kurtzman is in the comments. And Bob Kurtzman is like, I don't know what universe Sean is living in. None of this happened. We shot an additional 9 minutes of footage that we put into our movie that was just a little over 80 minutes, and we ended up with a 91-minute film. Goodness gracious, that's the uncut version of the movie. So that's what was added. This fairy tale that he tells himself that he went off and shot 45 minutes of footage because only 40 minutes of my film could be salvaged. It's beyond a lie. And by the way, I now have, again, for the documentary, which is going to be awesome, I have got witnesses to all of this who are happy to talk on camera with us. So Sean's been lying for a long time, and now he's going to have his foot in his mouth because I've got members of his team going, didn't happen. It's not true. So It's a shame. This is all a shame. I hate it. I hate that there's any negativity around anything that I've ever done. I don't want there to ever be negativity. But this is a fight that he kept throwing punches at me, expecting me never to say anything because I moved on to other things in my career. And I just went, no, man, no. You should be forget about respecting me. Okay, I got it. No respect for me. Got it. He should respect a movie that his name is on as the producer of the movie. It's his film. What is he doing? Like, again, I made a Val Kilmer movie. I'm not real happy with that movie. Do I stand by it? Is it mine? Yep. So that's what it is. And I just feel like it's like, one of your kids didn't turn out quite the way you wanted them to, so you throw them in a trash pile. That's nice, Sean. You're a lovely dad. Good stuff.
A while back, I remember you having an interview where you talked about that it was canon that Jason was a Deadite. At first I found that really, caught me off guard a bit. I don't know if I really bought into that. So I wanted to actually, hear you explain that out, why you think Jason is a Deadite and, how that fits into the timeline and why that's important.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. There are about 40 different timelines you can find online of the Friday the 13th franchise. Almost none of them make sense. You can kind of poke holes in most of it. The biggest problem in the Friday the 13th timeline, and I love when people try to fit Elias Voorhees into this, and I go, guys, there was no Elias Voorhees. I sat in my office at Cunningham Productions and came up with a guy named Elias Voorhees who was Jason's brother. I literally sat at my desk and came up with that. So I love now that people are like, there's a deleted scene from the screenplay of Part 6 where there's an Elias. If there is, that just means I am somehow psychic because I never read that script. I only saw the movie. By the way, Part 6, easily my favorite of the franchise, and I'm including my own film. So screw Jason Goes to Hell. I love me some Part 6, okay? So I'm the first one to say it. That being said, Elias, they now try to say that the killer in Part 2 is really Elias, not Jason. I'm like, oh, stop. Just stop. That's just some made-up nonsense fanboy crap. And I always love when people go, Jason Goes to Hell isn't canon. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Every word in Jason Goes to Hell is canon because it's a Friday the 13th movie, dudes. It's not a fan movie. It's not fan fiction. I didn't write it online. It's a real movie that got made by a real studio that owned the rights to Friday the 13th. So yeah, it's canon. Here's the thing. My biggest problem as a child watching these movies, okay? And again, remember, I grew up in the house where they made the movie. How do you go from there's a little boy in the 50s who drowns? He doesn't kind of drown. He doesn't mistakenly drown. He drowns. He's dead. His mother is so bereaved over this that for the next 30 years, she makes sure this camp will never open again by slaughtering everyone who goes there. Okay? That's the story. That's the actual story of the first movie. And at the end of the movie, in Sean's ripoff of Carrie, because why not? He was ripping off 7 other films, so why not go for broke? Jason leaps out of the water. Now, by the way, I love the first movie. It scares the crap out of me, and that moment is the reason the movie became a classic. It just is. The axe in the face, Kevin Bacon with the arrow coming out, and that kid jumping out of the water. That's it. That's the reason the movie's a classic. It's not a classic because of strip monopoly, or because kids run after a snake for 3 minutes. It's because there are some jumps in that movie that totally work. Here's the thing. It's the same little boy that jumped up and grabbed Alice. It's not a man. It's Ari Lehman, who was my age. He was a little boy when they hired him. So he jumps out of the water, pulls down Alice. So that's a little boy who lives at the bottom of the lake who drowned 30 years ago. Okay. In Part 2, which takes place weeks after the first movie, Alice is attacked by a grown man who has somehow found clothing that fits him and found a Yellow Pages to find out where this woman lives. So Swamp Boy came out of the pool, grew 2 feet, gained about 100 pounds, found clothing, found a Yellow Pages, got a driver's license, drove out to Alice's, killed her, took his mom's head with him, by the way, brought the head, and then dragged Alice's body back with him to put her in the shrine in the cabin in part 2. Okay, that one problem, just from the first to the second movie, which nobody ever spent any time figuring any of that out, that one jump made me go, what? Who's that? Who's the killer? That's the kid from the lake? How? Okay. Then part 5, you get a guy who isn't even Jason. I always love when people go, there's not enough Jason, and Jason Goes to Hell. And I go, do you like part 5? Part 5 rules. But there's no Jason in that movie. He's not in the movie. There's a hockey mask. There's no Jason. It's Roy, who has conveniently a picture of Jason in his pocket. I don't want to know what happened to that poor photographer. Part 6, you end up with a zombie, really kind of a Frankenstein's monster version of a zombie. By part 8, he dissolves into weird mutant boy in the sludge in New York, because there's all that radioactive material in New York City, where I grew up, tons of it. And my estimation is, okay, how do I make all of this make sense? Because I'm handed all these movies and told, create an interesting film and get the hockey mask out. So I'm a giant Evil Dead fan, have been since the movie was released. In fact, so much so, we couldn't see the movie because it wasn't playing anywhere near my town. It was playing in New York City, but I had friends in New York who could get me bootleg videos of movies. So a buddy of mine got me a bootleg video, VHS, crappy quality, played it in my friend Dan Lowenstein's basement with all my buddies. I was, I think, 13 at the time. Dude, first off, whenever you see a bad VHS copy of anything, it's scarier. It's just creepier. There's something about the bad tape quality that just makes it worse. We scared the crap out of ourselves with that movie. And the other thing about that movie, that was the most inspiring thing for me as a young filmmaker. I was like, okay, these guys made this for no money. They did whatever it took to make it happen. They've got great special effects. The shaky cam was like my favorite thing ever invented, and I've used it like 12 times since because of Sam. And so I was like, okay, I love The Evil Dead. If Pamela was so distraught over the loss of her son, wouldn't she look anywhere for answers, even the occult, to bring her child back? And what if she did bring Jason back? And what if she used, what if she used the Book of the Dead to bring him back? And she did, Pet Sematary style. But what came back was her sweet boy plus hell. Well, guess what? Now he can be anything. Now Jason can be anything. It justifies everything that happens through the whole run of the series, and it makes it all one timeline. Really simple. So I was like, great. She made a deal with the devil. And now Jason is Hell's assassin. I'm sorry, that just makes Jason cooler. Jason's just cooler because he's Hell's assassin. What, are you kidding me? So that's kind of where, that's my logic in how I built the concept. Here's the thing. We couldn't own The Evil Dead because New Line didn't own The Evil Dead. So all I could do, though, was I could, through my clever use of Easter eggs, which, by the way, back then weren't even called Easter eggs. Nobody did. I did this for the first time. This was a big deal. And everybody at New Line loved it. Sean didn't understand any of it, but he didn't care. So I had things like the crate from Creepshow in Pamela's basement because I wanted her to have this collection of things that were about revenge. All these things that are ways for her to exact revenge on the campers that had lived there. So it was all those kinds of items. And of course, Creighton Duke gets his hands on the Kandarian dagger. And that's the magic dagger that kills him. I'm literally using Evil Dead rules in a movie that I couldn't say the words Evil Dead. But I'm sitting there going, I'm a huge fanboy. I'm making this movie for other fanboys. Like, where are my peeps? And the fact that not enough people get it before I told everyone. Like, I spent so long not saying a word. But I asked Sam Raimi for the book. He gave me the book. It's in the movie. I didn't just put it there. It's there. There's no other reason for me to have John LeMay leaf through the pages of the Necronomicon, unless I'm saying something about what's happening in the movie. That's why it's there.
Actually, hearing you explain it makes a lot more sense. That's something I could actually truly buy into. It would be cool to see that mixture of universes like that.
Right. And look, here's the thing. Back then we didn't have a lot of shared universes. But when I was a kid, I remember I was really little, and Scooby-Doo was on, and it was an episode where Batman was on Scooby-Doo. So it was an animated Batman with an animated Scooby-Doo, and they were solving a case together. And I thought that was the single coolest half an hour of television I'd ever seen in my life. Like, oh my God, Batman is with Scooby-Doo. Here's the thing. We all love universe building. Like, I don't know a genre fan that doesn't love that now. I was trying to do that back then. The number of films that intersect at Jason Goes to Hell, it's crazy how many movies. And I was doing that out of my love for the genre, but also in a way to tell the story where I was like, okay, why can't Evil Dead and Jason and Friday the 13th live in the same universe? Why not? Why can't Haddonfield be in that universe? And Elm Street, they're all in the same universe. We never talk about anyone in a Friday the 13th movie going down the street to see the latest Nightmare on Elm Street movie. You don't see it happen. So why aren't they all? Because here's the thing. If they're not all in the same universe, then everybody in horror movies acts like a freaking moron. Because they would have seen those other movies. So don't go in the dark house. If you hear a monster in the house, run from the house. Do all the things. If everybody in Friday the 13th movies had seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, no one would behave the way they behave in a Friday the 13th movie. By the way, my one sadness is that we did have references to Jason Voorhees in Texas Chainsaw, and they cut them out, which is a shame because I did want to somehow connect those two as well.